to get by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Ilya able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
Three of the fans want one. Score! Off the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
All right, we're back with that. That is the intro. Wonderful. Okay, we'll keep it. We'll run with it. Yeah, we're back after technical difficulties that I guess nobody will ever find out about. But we're recording this one offline. So for everybody who was trying to get in live for the show, apologies. But hey, we're back.
Sorry to the one person.
The one person.
Yeah, I know.
It's all right. We're back. It's been about a month and a half. We've missed a decent amount of news for the off season. The Ducks have had their name come up in some pretty high profile rumors lately that we're going to get to. Obviously, the Eichel rumors have kind of been the big one that we've been involved in, and that's, I think, something we kind of briefly touched on the last show we did over a month ago now, where it was just kind of the beginning of those rumors where the Eichel stuff was starting to come out, and I think we had like one or two of the big names putting it out there that he would be on the move. I don't think at that point we had anything official that the Ducks would be involved, but now we've got pretty much everybody putting the Ducks right in the middle of that mix, and honestly, putting them as one of the front runners to be involved in it. It's a nice change, right? It's a bit of a decent change. Like, obviously we've heard the Ducks been involved in kind of big deals before, obviously this year with Pierre-Luc Dubois as well, but hey man, it's nice to have something to talk about that isn't how's next season gonna look and what fourth liner are we gonna sign in free agency. So it's not bad. I like it.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just like, I heard a rumor that Ovechkin's looking out. Oh, Anaheim, perfect fit. I mean, everyone wants to come to Anaheim. Why wouldn't Eichel want to get there? And why would Buffalo want to trade Eichel? And what do they think they could get in return that Bob Murray, as he clutches all his prospects and draft picks, wants to give away? Nothing. So I guess if we want to just, fall asleep into some little a fantasy, like what if, and then we just drift off to sleep and it's a fun fantasy. But I don't really see any plausible way that the Ducks are going to be in this. So it's just, let's just make believe for a while, and that'll distract us from the sad reality that is what this team is right now.
I think one of the things that's been the most interesting for me actually is I was listening to 31 Thoughts. I think I was listening to the NHL Hockey Podcast, and they were talking about, and Craig Custance mentioned that, Bob Murray is a GM who likes big trades and makes big trades. And it's so fascinating to me, because, and I think that's, the perception here and then, the perception out there is very different, but, he's made big trades. The problem is he does them fairly far apart. He doesn't do a bunch of them in one sitting, right? He traded for Kessler. He traded away Chris Pronger. He traded Freddie Anderson. These are trades of players of significance. You know what I mean? I don't know. Obviously, they're not maybe the types of big trades that everybody would like to see, but I do think there's something to it, and I just think in Anaheim, the fans have felt that there's been such a need for a change at the top of the roster that there is an impatience, justifiably so. I'm one of them. I just think it's interesting that Craig Custance, who I don't think is an idiot, mentioned specifically that Bob Murray's always going to be in these because he's that kind of GM. And I don't think anybody in Anaheim really thinks of him that way.
I would say he's involved. He'll throw his hat in the ring, but he is usually overvalued what he has compared to what he might get And out of all the names you mentioned, Kessler was the only one we got. We're trading away most of those names for some, like I said, future considerations, draft picks, prospects, anything other than a big name coming back. He doesn't like to make those kind of splashes. And if he does it, I guess it happens kind of at the trade deadline if he's got a chip to kind of move around. But it's again, I mean, unless he just goes out of character to get rid of prospects, he doesn't like doing it. He likes bringing stuff in and then trying to grow it from inside, and then, have it be his legacy moving forward. Just adding a piece, and especially just adding a big piece like that, where there's no supporting cast around or imminently coming in. Then I feel it's just like, I mean, yeah, I wish we could get him, but what the hell are we going to surround him with? So I don't know. I just don't see him ever bringing in anybody huge. He might be involved in some way, but then he usually just kicks himself out by what he asks for.
So here's the thing that I think is really, really interesting. Like, and I don't mean to cut you off, Ed. I just think, and I know we have stuff we want to talk about. I don't want to completely derail the show, but I do think, given what this offseason means, it's a very interesting time. Specifically, I think with John Solomon? Which one is it? Jeff Solomon, especially with him coming in. I think there are a lot of questions about Murray, and like, I think what you said, Jay, is totally fair as far as, like, he's kind of losing the better players in those. But like the last 3 years, the narrative around Anaheim has been his reluctance to sell those guys and bring back picks and prospects. And I think you're 100% right, and I think that criticism is 100% right. And I just think the narrative around Bob Murray is so crazy because it spans 13 years of him being the head of the team. And like, he's made coaching changes. He's made, he's moved out players that maybe mattered more on an emotional level than on a game level, like Cogliano at the end. But like, what? I don't know. I just think it's a really interesting thing that you're saying he doesn't make big trades and he always does this. And it's 100% true, I think. And that the narrative the last 2 or 3 years has been he won't do that at all. And he's refused to, make any moves at all. Like, I just think, I don't know. Where are you at on this, Ed? Like, how do you see, like, the totality of the Murray legacy versus the closeness, I guess, that we have to it right now?
I think it depends on what you classify and what those judging Murray classify as a big trade. Are we sitting here saying the Brandon Montour trade and Andre Kasha trade were big trades? Because I think for some people they will say yes because of this, the status they had in the organization when they were traded. Like, they weren't small deals. I'll give them that. Mm-hmm. Personally, I don't think Kasha and Montour are big trades. The last time we really made a big headlining trade was probably for Ryan Kessler. We've been involved in a few, or conversations for a few. Like, if we all kind of go back a little bit, when Evander Kane was traded at the deadline, we were involved in him. When Max Pacioretty was leaving Montreal, there were credible sources saying we were involved in trying to get him over to Anaheim as well. Pierre-Luc Dubois, like we mentioned earlier in the show, was a guy we were actively involved with earlier this year before he went to Winnipeg. And I'm sure there's a few more I'm missing there as well. Of
Justin Falk.
Yeah, Justin Falk was a big offseason one that obviously he ended up going to St. Louis from Carolina. So, there's these guys that we've been, rumored to be involved in, and then it's just never happened. And I think that's the issue with a lot of fans. When you ask everybody, what their issue is with Murray, a lot of people will kind of state that. Trade wise, I would say, a lot of people will stem their hate based off the guys he's re-signed and the guys he's lost and whatever. But on the trade front, it's always the Ducks have been involved in these big fish and then never reeled one in. And never really committed and gone for it. And then we all see the prices after and say, well, why couldn't we get that done? We don't know the details of why the Ducks didn't end up happening. But it kind of feels like that's the way this Eichel trade could go. I don't think Anaheim is comfortable losing Trevor Zegras and Jamie Drysdale, which is understandable. I wouldn't be comfortable losing them either. As great of a player that Jack Eichel is. But this is where they are in this rebuild. But in terms of Bob Murray, and to answer your question, there, I think that's the big thing is if whatever you classify as a big trade. When we look at the big names, guys who could be considered potential all-stars in this league, the Ducks have been involved in a few of those discussions, and nothing's ever happened. And it really hasn't happened since Ryan Kessler. And it's a long run to go where you've been involved in some of these discussions and nothing's happened.
And to me, that just means he's overvaluing what he has or what he's willing to pay. And so there's a reason why he got, the nickname Bargain Bob. I mean, he's looking for something where he really can just like, all right, there's almost no risk in looking bad here. It's all like, I got it, and we didn't give up much, and if it doesn't pan out, great. That's the same thing with his signings. You get your Heatleys, you get your $1 million show me contracts, and it seems like, hey, that's a big thing, but it's just he's looking for as little risk and hopefully a lot of reward, and he's willing to stick to that versus making a big splash. So when anyone comes out and said Bob Murray he's always wheeling and dealing, and he's always really making these big plays, it's like he hasn't made any that's brought anything to us. Brought's a fun word. Brought to us. It's usually the ones that are like, hey, we got rid of a big guy because that was killing our contract situation, our salary cap, and we need young talent. We got to rebuild all this stuff. And then ultimately, we just don't. Name the last time you had someone huge come in, and literally the only name that comes to mind before Kessler in a trade or anything is really Shattenkirk. And look at how well that panned out. I mean, just at this point, I just don't know if he can evaluate what he's going to get and what he has as a fair trade. He just thinks he has so much more, and he doesn't want to give it up for things that could easily be an improvement on the team.
I think with this one with Eichel, like this has to be the biggest trade the Ducks have been publicly involved in a very long time in terms of just the talent of Jack Eichel. Not many of those guys ever get traded, and when they do, the Ducks usually in the past haven't been kind of in a position where they've been able to go and get that done. This is the first time in a while where you feel like they could get it done, and there's a lot of people that are putting them up there as a favorite. Because of the assets that they have going out to acquire this third overall pick, and we mentioned Zegras and Drysdale, a few other guys in the organization that they could potentially move out that aren't necessarily past their prime. Doesn't make sense for Buffalo, but we'll get into that later. But guys like Raquel and Manson, Fowler, Henrique, guys that could kind of offset the cap hit that Eichel brings in. But if we're going to talk about realism on this. Obviously, there are credible sources. LeBron, Drager, Friedman have all said the Ducks are in it. But how realistic do you guys kind of see that this actually happens and Anaheim makes a pitch and actually eventually gets Jack Eichel?
So wait, real quick. I just want to say something to Jay's point real quick. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The point about, overvaluing your own guys. I think that's totally dead on, and I do think that's totally fair, but I also think this is one of those things where the outcome dictates how you see it, because we just saw, I believe it's Nick Suzuki, put up more points than Max Pacioretty in that series, and that was the trade. Like, it was Nick Suzuki and Thomas Tatar for Max Pacioretty, and now the team that gave up, or the team that got the young asset, is going to the Stanley Cup final. And, it's hard not to look at Vegas's struggles down the middle and be like, damn, it might be kind of nice to have a young center like Nick Suzuki, huh? So I just think, I definitely would have rather given up Sam Steele in the Max Pacioretty trade, because I think that was the holdup, Eddie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But by that same token, there is a degree to which it's easier to say that now that we have all seen what Sam Steele is.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
I don't know. I think Bob Murray definitely overvalues his own stuff, but I do think it's also understandable what the fear is there. And I think Eric Stevens mentioned that in his pros and cons of the Eichel trade, is if you trade one of these young guys and all of a sudden they fucking flourish in Buffalo, you look like an idiot.
One, but then also I think Eichel's trying to do a surgery now. So on top of
Right.
that, his trade value is already a little suspect to begin with. So when
for sure.
so like when Ed asked, well, what's the realism there? I mean, for anybody trying to, for Buffalo, they're going to want top dollar. They're going to want everything they can because they built Eichel as that not generational player, but that franchise player that's going to take them forward, moving on forever, and hopefully his whole career. But now he's got this horrific injury. He's already kind of mentioned that he's already kind of butting heads with management. So now everyone is sitting, looking back, going like, well, how much am I going to give up for this guy? And what am I actually getting in return? Do I get a guy who is unhappy just with where he is, or is he unhappy all the time? And how deep is this injury where they're arguing over how to treat his injury? And then it becomes, well, what's Buffalo going to give up? And Buffalo can sit pretty and go like, listen, we don't have to give this guy up. We have him under contract. And, he's either going to play for us or he's not going to play. And I don't think this is a guy who was just willingly going to sit out to not just to spite Buffalo. So I think they're more in the driver's seat. And they're the ones who are like, listen, if we're not getting top dollar for this, then we're not doing it. And I think GMs like Bob Murray would go, I'm not so sure I'm willing to give up my top assets and top draft picks for a guy who might be injured and we don't know exactly where this is all going. So that's why I think Bob Murray's easily going to just, even though it's very nice and it's a big prize fish out there, he's probably going to step back, and unless he gets an amazing deal, then he might pull the trigger on it. But I think it's got to be a nice deal for us for him to want to do it.
I think ultimately whoever walks away with Eichel here, the perception is whoever gets him has won, and the Sabres are going to lose this deal. There's rarely a chance where you have a guy of that quality who gets traded where you come out of it saying, man, what they got for that guy was great. What Ottawa got for Erik Karlsson was amazing, right? Well, we all came out of that trade and we said, man, San Jose ripped them off. And then look how that panned out.
2 years
right?
later.
The injury problems and I guess age to some extent caught up to Erik Karlsson, and the Sharks were bad, and the Sens got Brady Tkachuk out of it, and they got a lot out of that deal. Josh Norris came from that deal; he was great for them this year. The things that Ottawa got out of it now, you look at it in hindsight. I think Ottawa won that trade, and obviously San Jose is going to have cap issues to deal with, not just because of Karlsson's contract, but everything they got there, and that's the risk you run with a trade like this with Eichel, and now with the injury going into it. Like, I would not want to be Kevin Adams and the Buffalo Sabres right now, where you're in a situation where you have to trade this guy, and the best offer you're going to get is probably not what he's actually worth as a 100% healthy player playing the way he was before. At his age, you're likely not going to get what he's worth. But we're not going to be able to fully evaluate this trade like any trade for a superstar until 3 or 4 years down the road, when we really see how this injury affects Eichel, how he's doing in his new environment, if he's still with the team he got traded to, and then what those assets ultimately turn out to be. Like, unless you're Buffalo and you're getting from Anaheim, for example, one of Zegras or Drysdale, it's an immediate loss right now in that trade because you're not getting a top prospect. And at the end of the day, when the Sabres, I think he does get moved this offseason. I don't think he's in Buffalo to begin the season in October next year. I think they are not going to walk away with a piece like that. I think they're going to get a top draft pick, whether it's 3rd overall from Anaheim or 5th overall from Columbus or wherever he ends up going. I think they're going to get another top 10 pick from one of those teams. They're going to get a decent prospect. They're going to get another NHL piece to go back to offset the cap hit. I don't think they're going to walk away with a Zegras or a Drysdale or somebody of that stature from one of the teams that are interested. And we're all going to be talking about the Sabres lost this, but we're going to have to wait and see in 3 or 4 years down the road how it actually turns out.
Yeah. 2 thoughts real quick, and I'll let Steven jump in because I know he's chomping at the bit here. One, no way does Buffalo get out of this without looking like a loser. Like, if they keep him and then he plays horrible and Buffalo doesn't succeed, they look like they lost by not trading him. If they trade him, whatever they're going to get is not going to be what he's really worth, like Ed, like you said. So they look like they lost that trade. Second thing real quick, do you guys really think the Ducks will trade the top 3 pick, one that they've never had since Bobby Ryan, add any number of prospects for that guy. I just don't think that's going to happen, my opinion, but I'll let you guys go. Just want to put that out there. Go, Steven.
I mean, it's so weird. Like, I think the Erik Karlsson point is totally fair, because what you're seeing right there is, you're looking at two franchise level players who have an injury that is concerning moving forward. With Erik Karlsson, we've seen what that is. Now, the difference there, I suppose, is that Erik Karlsson was 28, 29 when he left Ottawa for San Jose. Jack Eichel's only 24. He'll be 25, I think, at the start of next season. And there are some reports that this surgery, that he and his camp are confident, like beyond confident, that if he has this surgery, he will be ready in 2 months and he will be fully healthy for the rest of his life. Like, this is like a cure, not a it. So, like, if I'm Kevin Adams, like, I don't know where the line is, right? Like, this is a franchise level player. This is a true blue number one center, heart quality player. This is a guy who you need to move forward in this league as a competitive franchise. It's also a dude who might never be that dude again, because a neck injury isn't a small thing. And as a superstar forward, he's going to get hit. You know what I mean? Like, and I think anytime you lose the best player in the trade, you lose the trade. All of the occasions where the winners are the guys who got assets is usually because one of two things happened, which is the superstar player got hurt and was never the same, or there's like a draft pick or a prospect that wildly exceeds expectations. And that's something you don't know for 3 or 4 years, So I think you guys are definitely right. Kevin Adams can't make this trade based on public perception. He needs to make a trade based on what he knows, like, about Eichel, and he needs to hold the line, because I think it's 1 more year, and then Eichel has a no movement clause. Yep. Okay, if he won't let me trade him wherever I want, but I can't trade him anywhere he doesn't want to go, like, I think that's a full stalemate. Like, I don't have to trade you, and you don't have to let me, so we're basically Mexican standoff. So I just think there's no world in which wherever he goes, everybody goes, damn, Kevin Adams pulled it off. Good for him.
Yeah, I think there's a slim chance. I honestly think there's a slim chance that happens. And it is if he acquires like a high-end piece right now. Like, again, we're going to keep referring to Ducks players because we're a Ducks podcast, so it just makes sense. But
like a Turcotte or... or shit, why wouldn't a Byram or a Newhook be,
Yeah.
I don't know that they necessarily have the money, but is it the worst idea in the world to say, what if we let Gabriel Landeskog walk and trade it for Jack Eichel instead?
Nope. You can. There's a lot of ways you could go about it. But if they walk away with a Byram, if they walk, like, for example, with LA, if they somehow got Byfield, Turcotte or Zegras, I think Byfield's a stretch, just like I think Zegras is a bit of a stretch. But that's how you win in this deal, because they're guys that are already high-end prospects near the top of the league in terms of, guys, in Byfield's case, I guess you could still kind of say just outside the NHL, and in Zegras' case, one of the top young players in the league. You got to walk away with that in a deal right now for Eichel to be considered a winner. But we look at, the past and these big deals. We talked about Pacioretty and the fact that we thought Vegas stole that one at the time. And, I still think it's a fair trade. But now you look at what Suzuki's doing in Montreal, and the perception has kind of switched. And we all remember the Weber-Subban trade and how, why would the Habs ever do that? Well, look where they are now. I mean, again, those are two Habs trades. But it can go the other way as well. I mean, the Hall-Larson trade is always going to look bad. There's never going to be a win there for Edmonton getting Larson over Hall, as much as Hall's draft lottery prowess.
I don't know because
Larson scored more playoff goals for Edmonton than Hall did.
Yeah, exactly. And Hall has jumped around to 3 different teams since New Jersey.
Could be more after this offseason if he doesn't re-sign in Boston. But yeah,
he'd rather sign in Boston for a nickel than go anywhere else.
Yeah, he's
not
gotta go
walking
back
away
there.
from that.
But it just shows you, like, after the fact, like, the perception of the trade will be one way to begin with, and then so many times you look at it a couple years down the road, and it all hinges in these big deals, because if you're trading a guy like Eichel, the thing going the other way most of the time are draft picks and prospects. So you just gotta wait to see how they pan out. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. That's why we see that perception switch. So in any trade for Eichel, I think you're likely getting one of those top picks in this year's draft back. So you got to wait at least 3 or 4 years before that pans out. So if it's a Matty Beniers, or if it's a Dylan Guenther, William Eklund, or whoever it is that would go to the Sabres with that other pick, then you got to wait and see. But ultimately, like, I just feel it has to happen. Like, I just feel like there's no way Eichel is on the Sabres come the draft. And that's the deadline for them, because I think if you miss the draft, you've missed out on that guaranteed pick, which holds so much value. You can't trade him after the draft for a first-round pick from, like, let's say a Columbus or an Anaheim next year, because there's no guarantee that with Eichel, that pick is going to be as high as it was. Then you're going to have to try and get those top prospects. You're more desperate. You're getting closer and closer to his no-movement clause. Trying to get a Zegras or a Byfield or a Turcotte, whoever, is going to be harder. The best time for the Sabres to trade him is now, and you can get one of those picks. And I think for them, the smart move is to target one of those picks and, a mid-level prospect, because you've got first overall. Then let's say if you get that third overall pick from Anaheim, you got first and third this year. Grab a guy like Jacob Perreault. You've got a good base there. You got 2 guys coming in this year. You got Perreault. You got Dylan Cousins. You've got Dallin. You've got maybe Owen Power who's coming in, right? You've got a base you can build around this year that it doesn't look so bleak, even though you lose Eichel at that point. And there's at least a direction there. I think the longer you hold out here trying to get a better and better deal, ultimately at the end of the day, and as we've seen with Ottawa holding on to Stone and Karlsson for as long as they did, you didn't get as good a deal as you probably could have got when you should have traded them the first time. And I feel like that's where the Sabres are with Eichel right now, is they're getting close to that point where you got to trade him now, or you're going to get less for him the longer you hold out.
Go, Jay, and then I'm going to make the case for Anaheim. So go.
I'd almost disagree a little bit, because even though it's a no movement clause, and that ends at the end of this season, they can always ask him to waive it. And this is a guy who obviously does not want to stay in Buffalo. And I don't think if he's got an opportunity, because if they're trading him to a contender that maybe wants him, not necessarily this year, but maybe next year. So even though there's a no movement clause, if things still aren't working out in Buffalo, he could still get a king's ransom at a playoff deadline punch, where you get an impact player going back the other way in Buffalo, and possibly more draft picks or prospects moving forward. And once again, that might be somebody who's not necessarily the top team. It's not like Tampa's like, well, we really need an Eichel, otherwise we're really screwed. It's kind of one of those teams where, like, listen, we're right there, but Eichel would just literally bolster us right through the playoffs, or hopefully. So I think that, because everyone kind of tries to, dude, they're not going to get it. If they don't do it this year, they're screwed. It's like, well, yeah, there's a no movement clause, so they can't just trade him to Ottawa or trade him to Detroit. But usually that's not the team that's looking to get that kind of player. So I feel like if they, from a Buffalo perspective, if they give away the guy that they have been trying to tout as the guy that's going to bring this team out of the dump, and then we just trade him for guys who might be really good prospects, and then, future things, we got to rebuild for another 3 or 4 years to get to where we hopefully want to be with this guy here anyways. So I think it's a hard sell for him to want to go like, listen, we're not going to do these nice prospects and draft picks. We don't have to get rid of him. He can still help this team be successful. And if we can find some way to make other moves around with our high draft picks and our high prospects and try and bring in complementary players, fine. And if it's not working, he's still unhappy here, we'll say, listen, we got a trade coming. We got a real good return for it. Do you want to go to this team? Yeah, it's kind of in his court, but it doesn't seem like at that point that guy would really, Jack Eichel would really go like, no, they're a contender. I want to stay here in Buffalo. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not waiving that. No, I think he would easily go to wherever he wanted to go as long as he's got a chance to win, because I think that's what he's looking for, a chance to win somewhere else.
Yeah, I have
a lot of good points. Break it down.
When he has the ability to say no, I think it naturally drops the value because it becomes less certain. I think the truth of the matter is if you trade Jack Eichel to any team, he's the best player on 25, 27 of 32 teams.
I say 26.
Shit. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just think the no movement clause definitely complicates things. But now I'm just thinking about a bunch of different shit. And here's an interesting question. If you're Seattle, do you trade for Jack Eichel? Would you trade the number 2 pick?
Well, it depends. It depends who they get. But I'd imagine they couldn't get anyone at Jack Eichel's caliber.
But that's what I'm saying. There's no one out there. There's not going to be another opportunity for an expansion franchise to add a caliber player right off the bat. Jack Eichel right off the bat. That's shit, man. If I was Ron Francis, I would be calling Kevin Adams every fucking day and being like, look, dude, I will let you pick players on other teams that I will take in the expansion draft. I want Jack Eichel. You know what I mean? It's insane. But here's the thing that I think is interesting, and I will try to make Anaheim's case. I do think Anaheim is legitimately in the conversation. I am scared to think that they will get him because it seems possible that they could. So I will make the case for Anaheim here real quick. I think if you're Anaheim, you offer the number 3 pick, you offer Max Comtois, and I think you offer Lucas Dostal. Buffalo does not have a goalie for next year. They do not have a legitimate goalie in the pipeline. I think Linus Ullmark was maybe supposed to be that guy, and he pretty clearly isn't at this point. If they get another top 10 pick, there's a really good argument that they should take Wallstedt. If you can get a goalie prospect that is highly touted enough to where not taking Wallstedt is a good decision, and you can get a player like Max Comtois, I think that's huge. I think having a top 6 winger with 30 goal potential, a potential franchise goalie, and the ability to take 2 players in the top 3 of this draft, which is a 60 draft. Because, you could walk out of there with Lucas Dostal, Max Comtois, Owen Power, and Eklund?
Yeah.
Mason McTavish? If Anaheim is willing to draw the line in the sand and say, I will give you just about anything but these 2 kids, I think they can get the deal done. I would put Perreault and Comtois. I would put Troy Terry's ass in the boot of a car. Anybody, man. Anybody that they wanted, I think, other than those 2 kids, I think you have to think is worth it. I think because, like Jay said, if they make this trade, it's 3 years. But they do have Darlene and they do have Cousins, like you said. So if you get, Matty Beniers, fuck it, what if they took Matty Beniers number 1 and they took...
You could get Owen Power and Matty Beniers with 1 and 3. You trade Eichel and you walk away with Owen Power and Matty Beniers. And then you get Maxime Comtois and Lucas Dostal. Let's say it's your deal. That looks good now. It all depends on what Owen Power and Matty Beniers turn into. Owen Power is not part of that trade because you were going to get him anyway. But Matty Beniers, Maxime Comtois, Lucas Dostal, you've got pieces in place. You got a good winger, top 6, a potential number 2 center who could be a number 1. You've got a 1-2 punch down the middle of Cousins and Beniers. That looks scary going forward. You got Power on the back end with Dahlin. You got Dostal with Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen as your 2, goalie prospects. If I'm Buffalo, Anaheim is who I'm targeting. That's who I'm looking at. Of all the teams interested, New York has a lot of pieces, but I don't know if I want to send them to another team in state to get a lot better and be a Stanley Cup contending team, unless you can get Lafreniere or Kakko, maybe. Columbus, there's not much to... That's the same argument I have with Seattle. It's Seattle has 2nd overall. What else do they have? They don't have any prospects. They're a new team.
They have, but here's the thing. The one thing I'll say for Seattle is, I tweeted this out the other night, but I really am curious. Like, how much is Jeff Skinner's contract
Yeah,
worth?
that's what I was going to say.
That's what Seattle
Second
has.
overall
Seattle
for
has cap
Eichel and
space.
Skinner.
Like, for real. Like, I will take Skinner. I will take Eichel. I will let you. I swear to God, you can pick any 3 players around the league that are going to be on the expansion list, and I'll give them to you. Like, I am not kidding. Like, I think the Rangers and the Kings make the most sense because they have Byfield, Turcotte, Lafreniere, Kakko. You've got this high level player. I think Anaheim makes sense with Zegras. I think if you accept that a player of that quality, a prospect of that quality, isn't going to be in this deal, then I do think that you're right. That it becomes, in my head, with what I'm thinking, it becomes Anaheim and Seattle have the 2 most attractive options. Because if you're Buffalo and part of getting out of Jack Eichel is getting out of the fucking trade and contract you made to keep Jack Eichel, because Jeff Skinner doesn't do Buffalo any good without Jack Eichel. Even with Jack Eichel, Jeff Skinner didn't do them a ton of good. So, like, the ability to get out of that contract and send Jeff Skinner probably someplace that'd be really nice.
He might do well
like,
there.
If you told, yeah, he gets a completely fresh start. I just, but like we just said a second ago, I do think there is something to look. We will give you a prospect pool that on the day you make the trade, you walk into a top 10 in prospect pool rankings based simply on the guys that we're giving you, plus the 2 guys you're going to take in this draft.
I think the most interesting thing about Seattle is how like much of a wild card they are to this deal, in the sense that they don't even have a team, so they could framework, like you said, the expansion draft around getting Jack Eichel, where the Eichel trade is they get Skinner and they get Eichel, they give up second overall, and maybe they take Merzlikins from Columbus and say, here you go, you can have, there's your starting goaltender, we'll take this guy, you have him, there's a goaltender. Okay, we'll take Josh Manson from Anaheim or whoever. Here's this guy, you can have this guy if you want him. Just examples. I'm sure there's better picks out there. We take Josh Mahura from Anaheim. Have this guy, and now it turns into second overall. We take Jeff Skinner's contract. You get Merzlikins, you get Josh Mahura, you get some other nice young player we stole from the other team in the expansion draft, and all of a sudden it becomes it's a very complicated framework, because you've got to basically have constant communication with Kevin Adams throughout the expansion draft to put this team together. You basically have to get the protection list and call Kevin Adams up when you're selecting players to make this work. It's very difficult for them, but it's possible.
That's exactly what
and it's why it makes it such an interesting wild card scenario, where I honestly think, because it's been put out there that Buffalo really wants to get another top 5 pick, I think Anaheim is at the top of their list. You're sending him to the Western Conference. You don't have to worry about him. I think they might be resigned to the fact that they're not going to get a Zegras or a Byfield, so that's why they're going for the top pick. I don't think you get a top 5 pick plus one of those guys. And I don't think you get a Byfield from LA anyway. So you go to Anaheim, you can get 3rd overall. You can get Maxime Comtois. You can get another prospect, a Dostal or Perreault or something like that. Or if you go to LA, maybe you don't get Byfield, but you get, I think they have 9th overall and Alex Turcotte, because you don't really need Turcotte if you got Byfield and Eichel down the middle. And you go for an interesting route there.
What the fuck kind of what did you just say?
Listen, I think there's only a few teams this makes sense for, is basically what I'm saying. I think LA and Anaheim are near the top of the list there. I don't think Columbus ends up getting it done, or being able to get it done, even with the 5th
You're
overall pick.
talking about Los Angeles giving up Turcotte because they have Byfield
and Eichel.
Okay, that is very different, because I don't know. I didn't put that together in my head that way, and so I was like, wait a minute.
With you, Steven?
But they already have Kopitar, which is why they can move on from Turcotte. I thought you were spewing 200 hockeyman nonsense about, I don't need any more top 6 centers.
You gotta stay off Twitter, Steven, man. It gets you right to that zone. People are just making ridiculous statements, and you gotta start arguing right away.
But all right, we got it. We've been talking about Eichel forever, which is understandable. So we got to wrap it up with a few things here. We
literally the whole podcast.
Yeah, it's almost been 40 minutes, but we talked about if it's realistic. I think it is to some extent, whether it happens for Anaheim or not. Jason, you're shaking your head. Don't think it is. I think it's more realistic.
It's a lovely dream. Keep dreaming, people.
I think it's more realistic than a lot of the bigger deals we've been involved in, because I think if of all teams, the Ducks are in one of the better positions to make it happen. But until it happens, I don't know. I don't know if I fully believe it yet.
It's like Toronto getting out of the first round. Until it happens, I'm not putting a whole lot of faith in it.
If it does happen, Steven, you already put is that what you would say is your ideal package there? Is come to our third overall Lucas Dostal and then somebody to kind of offset the cap like an Adam Henrique or something?
I think the actual, like, if you're really just focusing on offsetting cap, then I think the easy one is Ryan Kessler, because we still have another year of that deal left. And it's insured. I know I beat this point home, but it is insured. That is not money. That contract for that cap hit, moving out a $10 million cap hit, bringing in one that's almost $7 million that only costs you about, I think, under $2 million in actual cash. That is huge for a team like Buffalo. I think if they ask for Raquel, you give them Raquel. If they ask for Troy Terry, I think, I'm a little more reticent to do that. I would rather probably trade Perreault than Terry. But yeah, I think, building it around 3, Comtois and Dostal is right around where I'm at. So yeah, I think that would probably be my.
Was I gone for this whole Dostal goalie trade? They're not getting rid of Dostal.
Honestly, I didn't even think about that. In all of my kind of trade mock-ups that I've thought about for getting Eichel from Buffalo, that doesn't include Zegras or Drysdale. I haven't even really thought of including Lucas Dostal. But if you're going out to get Eichel, you're not. I know we've talked about on different shows, and a lot of people have talked about trading John Gibson. If you're getting Eichel, you're not exploring trading John Gibson. Like, that's just not happening. You're bringing in one to support the other. I think if you bring in Eichel, I have no problems putting Lucas Dostal in that trade. Because if you're bringing in Eichel, it's to be a competitive team sooner rather than later, and then you're riding John Gibson. Who knows how long it's going to take Lucas Dostal to get to the NHL level, whether he's going to continue his good form from the AHL playoffs or not, and from the tail end to the regular season. Right, but I think I would rather include Lucas Dostal in this trade than Jacob Perreault, just because we're going to need a scoring winger in 2 years more than we're going to need, a backup goaltender to have another Freddie Gibson scenario with Gibson and Dostal, where I'm fine just riding John Gibson, and that's it going forward. Like I think
until the wheels fall off.
I mean that's what you're banking on at that point, right? If you're bringing in Jack Eichel, is that John Gibson's your guy. He's on such a nice contract for a goaltender of his caliber right now that if it comes down to Dostal or Perreault, I think those are our two top prospects outside of Zegras and Drysdale. I'm putting Dostal on that deal. I'm going third overall, Dostal, Henrique, and whoever else they want to take from us.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't think Henrique ends up in this deal.
If Pat was here, he'd agree with you because you only need an average goalie to win championships.
Are you talking about John Gibson being average?
Here's the thing, though.
No. Just saying, like, like in like 2 or 3 years, if the Ducks are somewhat capable of getting to the playoffs and going deep in the playoffs, Gibson doesn't have to be top dog. He's just got to be average. The Ducks aren't going to be Stanley Cup potential competitors. I mean, they might be playoff competitors, but not Stanley Cup favorites or just like in that conversation for another 3 years. That's 3 years more of Gibson.
With Eichel, though?
Okay,
like, what does that change your perception?
If you add Eichel and you don't give up Zegras or Drysdale, that's huge. That is so huge. Like, honestly.
So at year 3, they are Stanley Cup competitors. Next year,
they are dark horse competitors.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing. Here's the thing. You have to give up. You have to give to get, and adding the one thing that this team needs more than anything.
Another center.
A high-end center, a legitimate number 1 center, when they might have
not wingers that can score goals.
They don't need wingers that can score goals. Jack Eichel scores goals, and Trevor Zegras looks like he's going to be of a caliber to where he's going to get other guys lots of goals.
Will be great down the middle. I'll give you that. If you get your Eichels, your Zegras, your Henrique, and your Getzlaf, that's an amazing 4 centers.
I also don't think if you add Eichel, then that's the extent of what you do this offseason. There are plenty of pieces I think they're unhappy with that you can move out, whether it's a Sam Steele or an Isaac Lindstrom or whatever.
To do another podcast on this.
And you can go out, and I think you can add the wingers that you need to accompany bringing in Jack Eichel.
Will they? Will they pay for it? They don't pay in the offseason. They don't pay for
I think
free
if
agents.
you swing
Bob
for a
Murray.
deal, I'm not confident that he swings for the deal for Jack Eichel because we know the history of Bob Murray lately, and it just doesn't happen. I think if you pulled that off, you're showing that you're actually willing to make the big move for that, and I just can't imagine that's the only big move you make is going out to get Jack Eichel. And maybe, obviously, I'm not saying they're going to go out and trade for a Max Pacioretty or a big name winger like that. But there are guys in free agency. There are other guys I think you can go out and get in trades to accompany that, where they're kind of top 6, fringe top 6 or middle 6 wingers to accompany what you already have. And adding Eichel alone, I think, makes you a playoff contending team. Now, Jay, you're right. It doesn't make the Ducks a Stanley Cup contending team by any means, but the Montreal Canadiens are in the Stanley Cup final, right?
Not according to
No.
Steven. Next year they are.
It's not about. It's not. There's a. You got. They do not become Stanley Cup favorites. I don't want it to be like I'm saying that. But what they do become is a team with one of the 5 best centers in the league, one of the 5 best goalies in the league, 2 of the 15 best prospects in the league. If they don't have to give up Lindholm, they don't have to give up Manson, they don't have to give up Raquel. Like, I'm not saying that they should be afraid to part with those players by any means, but if they don't give up any of that, if you bring in Eichel essentially for what Max Comtois' cap hit is gonna be, this year's pick, Lucas Dostal, and again, I do think the one thing everybody misses is Ryan Kessler's contract. I think that gets in. If the Ducks trade for Eichel, Ryan Kessler is in that deal. Like,
Buffalo take that.
What?
I don't know if Buffalo would.
I don't know if they're going to have a
'cause
choice.
They just don't win in that situation. It's just, I feel like they could do so much better elsewhere. And at worst case scenario, if they don't take it, they still don't lose because they still have an Eichel.
Yeah, but if he doesn't want to, so that's, I wanted to mention this earlier and I completely forgot. Like, the thing to your point, Jay, is it comes down is if Eichel decides that he won't play for them. Like, if he holds out, then he has all the cards, and it doesn't matter what Buffalo does. They're gonna have to either trade him or just let him sit there.
They'll let him sit there because, in public opinion, because once again, they're gotta placate to the fans, and if Eichel's not willing to play, even though he's under contract, Eichel looks like the dick, not Buffalo. Buffalo is like, listen, play. We're not going to trade you right now. We don't have anything that's coming back our way that replaces you in enough capacity that makes sense for this organization. And this is about the organization, not you
Pierre-Luc
as a
Dubois
player.
just did this. Pierre-Luc Dubois just went out there and played so bad on purpose that they traded him. Columbus, who again is never getting a free agent.
He's not a franchise player. Eichel is
They
player.
drafted him to be that, though.
They would hope he would become that, but I think Eichel was definitely drafted as that. And even though they missed out and they didn't get the #1 overall pick, Eichel was there, and Eichel talked about, "I'm proud to go to Buffalo, and I'm gonna keep going." So this has been built up for that. They brought in Hall just to keep Eichel happy, make this whole thing work, and now it's falling apart. And them just getting rid of him and not getting just a substantial return, they're not going to do that. I feel like they would be like, "Listen, sorry fans, we effed up for another 5 years. Hopefully 5 years, everything we get might work out, but who knows now."
Don't think they can bring him back. Like, I definitely agree that, like, they need to get as much of a return as possible, but I don't think there is any way that he can be on that team by the start of next season. There's no way that can happen. It's so bad. That situation is so toxic. Like, it's just like it was with Ryan O'Reilly. Like, he's just like, "I'm not coming back."
If you're saying that Buffalo is trying not to look like the dicks here in this situation, I think already, if you're a Sabres fan, you're not happy with Jack Eichel. You know he wants out. You know, even if he doesn't have to publicly come out and say he wants out of Buffalo, we all know he wants out of Buffalo. Like, he is the bad guy in this scenario. Like, if Kevin Adams trades Jack Eichel, it's not because, you know, it doesn't look bad on him in the sense that, you know, why is he trading Jack Eichel? We all know Jack Eichel wants out of Buffalo. It's no secret that he wants out of Buffalo. So, you know, you're already in that situation here where Jack Eichel is the bad guy. Whether he sits out the start of the season, if he's still there or not, I don't think that changes. So I think the longer you wait, if you're the Sabres, the more desperate you get to move him, and teams are going to realize that. The longer you wait, the more desperate it is. If you get closer to the season and this guy's not playing and he's sitting out games, you're now desperately trying to move this guy. Nobody wants that situation to happen. I think they're going to resolve this before the start of the season. And like I said before, just the longer you wait, the less offers you have on the table, because you don't have guaranteed top picks. You have teams you think are going to be bad that you hope is going to be a top pick, but it's not guaranteed. So then you're having to go out and get a Zegras or a Drysdale, which it looks like most teams aren't willing to offer at this point. I think the best offers you're going to get are now. And whether they do it or not, that's up to Kevin Adams, and that's up to the other teams involved, whether they're willing to pull the trigger or not. But I don't.
It just said no one's willing to give up those top prospects. So
that's just an assumption.
Even
I'm
if you
assuming.
Yeah, I was just saying, and then like move forward 6 months, they're still not all of a sudden going to give you those top prospects. So who the hell cares? Wait till teams are maybe desperate, especially the top teams. Not necessarily that you're going to get great draft picks or prospects out of it, but maybe more impactful players that, hey, these guys we're plugging into the lineups. These guys we can get some sort of.
But that doesn't do Buffalo any good, though.
Neither does trading Jack Eichel. They're screwed. Like I said, they're screwed no matter what.
This is the thing, right? If it's Dostal,
we can talk about this all night.
versus Raquel and Manson, like, you take the picks, like, because a Raquel and a Manson would definitely come in and make the team better, right?
Can we trade Montour again to him?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Sign in.
Let's move on. We didn't even talk Tkachuk, but I didn't really want to get into that because I knew Eichel would kind of dominate the discussion. We haven't been linked to Matthew Tkachuk. There's just been the Tkachuk rumors are at the point where we originally talked about the Eichel rumors, where it was like one or two people talking about it, where they're saying that Matthew Tkachuk apparently wants out of Calgary, and of course, because we're in on Eichel, everybody's linked.
Of course, he wants to go to Anaheim.
I don't think there's any absolute way he comes in division to Anaheim. I don't think that's possible. We'll get into that later if there are more concrete rumors. We're gonna probably have to talk Eichel again at some point, whether it's resolved or not. On one of the upcoming
Here's the
shows.
question, real quick, to wrap this up.
Thought we did.
Am I the only one who would rather have Tkachuk than Eichel?
I think so.
No,
I would rather have Eichel.
I'd take. Once again, it depends on return, because we're talking trades here, so it depends on return.
If the return is equal,
Tkachuk better.
Who would you rather have? If the return is equal, the same return for Eichel or Tkachuk.
Eichel.
Yeah, I'd rather have Eichel.
I'd take it.
I think I'd
Don't
rather
get me
have
wrong,
Tkachuk.
Tkachuk's
Yeah.
amazing guy, but I feel like Max Jones is Tkachuk light, and so unless Max Jones is the trade back, I don't know. The Ducks would need that extra center moving forward with Getzlaf moving out, Henrique, who knows. Then you got your Zegras and your Eichels. I mean, that's 1-2. That's good.
It's one of those scenarios you really can't go wrong. Like, I would love Matthew Tkachuk. Don't get me wrong, but I just lean towards Jack Eichel. I think he's potentially a top 5 center in this league.
What you would trade Eichel for, I assume you could get Tkachuk for.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I would assume you could get Tkachuk easier than Eichel.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the last little bit of topics here because we're almost pushing an hour. So the Ducks did make some coaching changes. Obviously, not the ones that the high profile one we thought would happen. Dallas Eakins is returning next year. Bob Murray is returning next year, but the assistant coaches are gone, or at least not coming back as assistant coaches. There was, I think the Greg Beecham put out that they might have other roles in the organization. I don't know if that's actually going to happen or not, but Marty Wilford and Mark Morrison are not returning as assistant coaches. The Ducks signed Geoff Ward, who was with the Calgary Flames last year, and they signed Mike Stothers, who was last with head coach, I think, of the Ontario Reign in the American Hockey League. So we'll see a bit of a new setup. I know, obviously, Bob Murray came out and said he wanted some veteran guys to be behind the bench with Dallas Eakins, and Mark Morrison really wasn't a veteran NHL guy, and to some extent neither was Marty Wilford, other than with the Ducks organization. So you bring in two guys who've been around, especially Jeff Ward, who's been a former head coach in this league. I think that's going to be good for Dallas Eakins. How much it actually impacts the Ducks' success next year, I mean, remains to be seen. We'll have a new guy running the special teams, so that will always be a topic of discussion heading into next year. But do any of these guys really, stand out for you? For me, it's it's not really a headlining thing. I feel like we knew there was going to be changes, and changes have been made, but I don't necessarily think I'm excited about how these guys are going to pan out next year. I'm just kind of intrigued on how special teams, specifically the power play, is going to be looking different next year.
Yeah, that's the only thing I'm caring about, is because that power play's got to figure its crap out. Because, I mean, at this point, ever since Paul McLean, the Walrus, was in charge of the power play, it's just been dog crap. I mean, it had been dog crap before that. He came in, did it, and it was like, hey, we need you to make the power play good. It became first in the league, and we're looking for a new coach, and it's not you. Thank you. Goodbye. And then he leaves. And then the power play just goes to crap. So I don't know exactly how great Calgary's power play has been, or how the head coach from there is going to come over and all of a sudden make the power play better. But that's all I'm looking at, because special teams is one of the bigger things, besides overall play, that has killed us for the last couple of seasons. And if we can add in a couple of power plays and just not be so 30, 31, or 32 in the league, I think that's going to be helpful to win at least a couple of games, a handful of games, somewhat respectable moving forward. But the special teams for me is probably the biggest thing, and that's kind of what the assistant coaches are in charge of. Maybe a little bit of defense, offense, coordination on 5-on-5. But Jesus, that special teams has got to change, and that's the assistant coach's job. So that's also where my focus is. Let me see it. Show me what you can do.
Steven, what do you think? Anything jump off the page with these guys for you?
No, I nailed it all. All right, moving on.
I honestly
Back to Eichel.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing about that. Actually, no, I think the thing for me is the fact that Jeff Solomon came over, and then Mike Stothers came over, and Stothers was the AHL coach for the Kings, the Ontario Reign. Thank you. When Solomon was there, I honestly wonder if we kind of already know who's going to be in charge next year. I'm not. It's really hard for me to look at this and not think that maybe what we're getting is because Solomon asked to leave the Kings. He wanted a bigger opportunity. Considering how well thought of he was in that organization, he left for something legitimately bigger. And he's not going to the rival to just be another AGM. I really do think there's a very, very good chance that this time next year, Stothers is the head coach and Solomon is the GM. Yeah. I think there's a very good chance that what we're looking at is just a transition year, a true blue transition year. I think, it allows Murray and Eakins to kind of get one more year, and maybe something crazy happens and they keep them. But I really think that there is every reason right now to think that next year, especially with Robin from Jewels from the Crown, I was talking to her about Stothers, and she was telling me he has a very similar reputation to what Eakins did in the AHL, where it's about helping these guys become better by maturing and being held accountable and solving problems on their own. He's not a mad scientist tinkerer type. He's more of a player's coach. You know what I mean? He coaches the guys and he wants them to handle these things. And Jeff Ward coming in and changing the power play, it feels because he's going to come in and he's going to run a 4-forward 1D setup. It seems to be the rumor, which is exciting, and just feels like it's a free year for him to see if he can get a hang of it with some of these young guys. And going into next year, maybe the team feels they're in a better spot moving forward.
Yeah,
like an evaluation year. Mm-hmm. Just kind of hey, here it is. We're
almost like a preseason.
Yeah, it's almost like you guys hang out here. Here's what we have. You guys see what you have. See what you can kind of work in, and see what we can do as we make that transition.
Yep. I think for sure, if you had to pick one that's more likely going to happen, I think Jeff Solomon becoming the GM is starting to look more and more likely. If I had to pick one that's likely going to happen, I think that is, and that's exciting. Honestly, like, I know Steven, you were talking about Eric Tulsky for a long time as a guy that you were, wanting to become the next GM of the Ducks. We've talked about. Oh God, why can't I remember his name? Our other AGM was head of pro scouting. Why can't I remember his name?
Mark Madden.
Martin Madden. Sorry, Martin Madden. We were talking about him, but now it just kind of seems like Jeff Solomon wouldn't leave the Kings and to come here and not have a chance of being the GM, right? Like it just doesn't make sense. And I think bringing in Mike Stothers is maybe not grooming him for the head coach, but giving him another guy to look at. I think they're going to look at Dallas Eakins depending on how his season goes. I think they're going to look at Stothers. I think they're going to look at some outside guys as well, and then this gives two guys in-house for Solomon to potentially look at next year and say, okay, do I want to go with either of these guys? How do they do this year? Am I going to go look outside? And I'm sure, two guys who will for sure get interviews if Solomon becomes the GM are going to be Eakins and Stothers, and then they'll figure out which direction they kind of want to go from there. But, I would bet money on Solomon being the next GM for the Ducks, which is exciting because, we've talked about, his impact with the Kings on their analytics department and how that could kind of look forward to Anaheim and their non-existent analytics department right now and what that could potentially look like for player evaluation and everything like that in the future for them. So it's exciting. We've talked about for how long we want a new direction, a clear direction from this team, a pivot away from the way Bob Murray does things, and I think you get exactly what you want there by bringing in a guy like Jeff Solomon to take over from him. I hope that happens. We got another season here of Eakins and Murray that we got to grind through. But, with Zegras and Drysdale and potentially Solomon coming in to be the GM, there's at least a direction here.
Yeah,
Just had a thought. Sorry. Quick thought. They fire Bob Murray mid-season. He comes in, immediately makes a trade for Jack Eichel, and he looks like a savior.
Jeff Solomon?
There it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love it.
There it is. That's
He
how it
trades
happens.
all of the Kings prospects still.
Yeah, right.
He goes, no, you can have all their guys. They said it's fine.
No. They said it's cool.
It's interesting too because like you said with the Tulsky coming in, that was always my guy because he was a guy who had a reputation for really building and overseeing strong analytics departments, and that's what Solomon's doing this year. I don't know, man. I don't know if I really am just Charlie at the board with all the red string just making stuff up, but I really do feel like I'm starting to just see this almost as a guaranteed transition year and a learning year for a couple of people. And next year, we kind of already know who's going to be in charge. I'm kind of talking myself into that being kind of the plan the whole time now. So
Who's Charlie in front of a board with red strings?
is it from shit? Why can't I think of it?
I don't know because you lost me the second you
Freaking
said
Philly
that.
show. That stupid Philly show that Pat likes.
Oh yeah, it's always sunny in Philly.
Yeah.
You couldn't think of that. You said Philly a whole bunch of times, but you couldn't think of
It's always sunny in Philadelphia. Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Whatever. I don't watch that show. I don't care.
Okay, we'll keep making references about shows you don't watch.
Oh, it's a meme. Shut up.
All right, we got a few more things here to wrap up the show I wanted to talk about. I was going to look at the Ducks looking to re-sign Josh Manson, but I feel like we could probably ramble on about that for 20 minutes, so maybe we save that for an upcoming show. I know we're probably going to get on and talk...
I've never felt so fucking dissed in my life. One of us is going to spend 30 minutes talking about why it's a great idea.
Steven.
I know we're going to get on and talk Eichel again whenever Pat's available to do a show, so we're going to have another show relatively soon to get Pat back on and talk Eichel, so I think we should save the Josh
But
Manson
he's talking to
stuff for that.
Boosters and
Yeah.
Boosters and Beasters.
Yeah, so we'll get back on to talk the Manson stuff there. We can make note of it. Like we did a live stream of it, but the Ducks won third overall in the draft lottery, which was like a month ago. We've already kind of vaguely mentioned that in trade talks for Jack Eichel, so I don't think we need to hit about that. But I guess the last thing I want to touch on is the playoffs. That's kind of what's been going on lately and what we've been watching, and obviously Corey Perry making back-to-back Stanley Cup Finals, Dallas last year and Montreal this year. He seems.
I know what Steven's gonna say.
He's the key to the dark horse teams.
Steven's gonna say.
Like nobody thought Dallas would make the Stanley Cup final, and then they made it. And nobody thought Montreal would make the Stanley Cup final, and they made it. And I guess Corey Perry is the key piece to this, right?
Oh yeah. Whatever team he goes to, except the Ducks, does well. No, but you gotta get Pat Maroon. He just leaves, goes to St. Louis. St. Louis, no one thought St. Louis was going to do what they did. Sure enough, wins the Stanley Cup.
Yeah,
Then goes over to Tampa Bay. They were probably favorites, but he goes over there, wins the Stanley Cup, and now he's back on Tampa Bay. And for a third year in a row, he's back in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah.
The key note here is that leave Anaheim and you will have success.
Yeah. Somebody tell Ryan Getzlaf that. Well, Ryan Getzlaf was going to go to Vegas. Maybe that's where we tipped him over the spot.
That would have tipped it.
Oh man, what a series that would have been.
Played against Perry.
Yeah, Getzlaf versus Perry. Oh man, I would hate to see it, but also love to see it. You know what I mean? Like that would have just made that so fun for Ducks fans and like so painful at the same time.
I don't know how that would play out. That would be so entertaining though.
Like the impact.
Do they get mad at each other? Are they dicks to
fight?
each other?
Oh, 100% they are. 100% they are.
But like tongue in cheek because of the twins. Oh man.
Did you guys see Perry steal Marshall's stick?
The best shit in the world, dude.
It reminded me of the
Every time
cement.
he does that stuff, I'll
I
never
love
get
it.
mad. Even if he does it to us, like at some point later, if he does it to us, it's just like, dude,
It's just such a Corey Perry moment,
It's
right? Like
Corey.
there's.
The other thing, like,
Go ahead, Steven.
I was saying, like, Marcius, I was like 5'6", and Corey Perry's, 6'3", old man. Like,
Yeah.
and he
That's
just-
slight payback
it
for
looks like he's
the
picking on him in high
missed
school.
high
He
stick,
just
though.
grabs his stick and throws
because
it.
he got high stick by Marshall the game before that didn't get called. That's some.
Oh,
small
that was the
payback.
one where he busted his
Yeah.
face.
But
yeah.
that play,
Oh.
that play specifically reminds me. Obviously, the play where he skated by Semin when Semin was sitting on the bench and just yanked his stick away. There was a time in the playoffs against Hossa where he just held onto Hossa's stick and the Hossa let go and then just dropped it on the ice. And then
Jeff Carter.
yeah, I
where he
put
did
water
the
in Jeff
water
Carter's
bottles
glove.
with his-
There's so many moments
What are
like
you
that.
gonna do?
man.
What are you gonna do?
I'm so.
It's just
I've
ultimate
never felt
shithousery.
so vindicated about loving someone in my entire life, dude.
Oh, man.
Like there's nothing
Watching all
wrong with
these
the play.
people be like-
It's not illegal, but it's just like it's shithousery taken to another
just a
level.
prick. He's a total
Technically
prick.
is illegal, but it's just
Yeah.
so quick and nonchalant about it, and it's just like it only pisses off that one person.
Yep, exactly.
And it pisses off that one person.
And he does too, because he does like look around like, oh, what the fuck? And it's like,
and then he's like, I gotta grab his jersey and tell him how mad I am.
That's what he wants, and I mean, like,
I know.
to
love
be
it.
fair, like he has
To be fair.
outside of that and being a veteran for that team, like he's done fairly well. I think he has 8 points in the playoffs so far, which is kind of near the tops of that team. Like he has kind of gotten it all done for them this year, and he was brought in, I think, for two things: to be a veteran presence and to potentially be a guy in the playoffs for them. And
Playoff Perry.
yeah, and he's done it all, and he did that for Dallas last year. Maybe not to the same extent, but he was a veteran guy for them, and he chipped in every now and then.
I thought he did that. I thought he did a good job in the playoffs
Yeah.
too for Dallas. I think his playoffs. You bring him in
what
for
they
the
brought Wayne
playoffs.
Simmons into. It's just working.
He's become that guy. Like every generation has a few of those guys where like every year they find a new
Slot
team and
Lemieux.
they just become that playoff guy that every team wants to add. And it's not just because of him but he just finds a way to go deep in the playoffs with whatever team he's on, and he seems to be that guy.
It's your Claude Lemieux. It's your Justin Williams. Your Game 7 dude. And Perry. Anyways.
I have a great theory, guys. Here's what happens. So,
Yes.
Corey Perry is actually the new Marian Hossa. So Montreal loses to Tampa Bay. Then
Goes to Tampa.
Then Anaheim trades for Jack Eichel, signs Perry in the offseason, and we win the cup next year.
Against Tampa
Guys,
Bay?
I figured it out. Let's go. Against Tampa Bay.
No, it'd be complete Marion.
Montreal.
It would be
No,
complete.
Montreal.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, I was gonna say it'd be complete Marion Hossa if he lost to Tampa and then signed for Tampa,
went on
and it was
Tampa,
Tampa
and
Montreal.
then
Well, I guess it
Tampa
wouldn't be
won.
Tampa Montreal next year.
And then
but,
Montreal
yeah.
wins. But yeah.
No, that's what it is.
But
My
he,
God, is that far-fetched?
he's reviving.
Let's make it happen. I'm calling it now, guys. Guaranteed.
I would bring him back. I don't care.
Yeah, you're trying to play.
I would like him if
Playing 5D checkers and it's a chess game. You're about to lose.
the crazy thing is like he's reviving his image as a player, right? Like he left Anaheim, we're like, okay, his best years are behind him. Like this guy's done. There's no way he's gonna be.
Still true. All of this is still true.
But he's just found the right role for this point in his career. Like the Ducks were still trying to use him as a top 6 forward, and went before he left, and then they bought him out.
There's just no way we could pay him $6 or $7 million to be that playoff guy. So it's like we got screwed.
I'm not going to relitigate this because I will drag this podcast on
he's gracefully found his role at this point in his career, which is great to see. And I think, whether it's a few more years left for him or whatever, like I think every team kind of knows the role he fits now, and he's become a valuable player for what he does. I think now, which is
especially at the price point he's at.
And I think whether he goes back to Montreal or not at the end of the season, there are going to be a long list of competitive playoff teams that are going to be interested in bringing him in. I think he honestly will probably go back to Montreal, or maybe look at Toronto or something. It's Toronto or Montreal. He's living in Canada now. I think the only exception would maybe to come back here to retire as a Duck if he wanted one last season. But if he doesn't win the Cup this year, he's going to want another shot. And I think it's Toronto or Montreal. And I think he's really made a bond with some of the players in Montreal on this run. I think he fits for what they want to do. And, they're a young team, but also a team who's...
It's Cole Caulfield's big brother.
They're in a small window here, so...
Everyone's big brother to Cole.
literally everybody in the league is a big brother.
I'm trying to find a little brother on Montreal to Cole Caulfield.
But yeah, the playoffs have been exciting for the fact that Montreal has made this kind of destiny run. Like, Tampa hasn't steamrolled everybody, but they're a team we fully expected to be here. They took a unique and difficult route to get here, but this was expected.
What unique difficult route did they take?
Well, like they were touted as like
Florida was hot coming in. Yeah, they weren't even. They didn't have home ice against Florida.
Yeah,
and Florida's a good team, but they lacked goaltending until night.
Florida, Carolina, New York. Like that's a tough gauntlet to run.
That's not an easy gauntlet.
That's not that. I'm not saying it's not difficult, but like there's nothing special about that. Like they had like the most playoff run of anybody. It's like
Toronto, Winnipeg.
I'm saying they didn't steamroll everybody.
Montreal had to beat to get to
it's because they
Vegas.
played 3 good teams in a row. That's what happened.
No, I know, but I'm saying like we expected them to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. They did, but they made it there in maybe a little bit longer fashion than I think a lot of people had thought. Like they are by far, I think, the best roster in this league for a reason. Defending Stanley Cup champions. They went through 6 games against Florida. How many games did they play against Carolina? Did they sweep them?
I don't think they've lost a back-to-back game this postseason.
Did they sweep Carolina or no?
No.
Carolina went 6, I think.
So 6-6, and then 7 against the Islanders, and a really, really, probably one of the best, excellent executions of a Game 7 I've seen. That 1-0 win over the Islanders. That was
shorthanded goal was the winner.
An unbelievable game by them. But again, they look like a juggernaut. But then, meanwhile, on the other side, you've got 2 Eastern Conference teams, something we'll never see again, likely, unless we have another situation like this. And you've got this underdog team that somehow scrapes their way to the Stanley Cup Finals. They beat the second best team in the regular season in the playoffs to get there. We have this every 3 or 4 years. We had the Devils and the Kings that one year. We had the Rangers and the Kings when they kind of came out of nowhere and made it to the finals. I think Philly that one year. They were like ranked 7th and they made it to the finals against
Philly rocked
Chicago.
That year. Chicago.
Yeah,
that was when they came back down from 3-0 against Boston.
Yeah,
man.
That's when we traded Pronger.
Every now and then you kind of have these teams, but they ultimately don't end up winning, right? Like they get that far and they just come against this team that's actually touted as a Stanley Cup contender, and it just ends up being
None
too
of them
much.
had Carey Price.
Yeah, but well, one of them had Martin Brodeur, so
Who?
One of them had Brodeur.
The guy from St. Louis.
No, I hate you. But
the CEO of Enterprise, right?
Yeah, right.
what do you give Montreal shots of actually getting this done?
Like a percentage?
Well,
2 out of 5.
Do you think they get it done? Yeah.
Like if you do this, if you play 35 guys, like if you do this series 5 times, I say they win 2 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's fucking hockey, dude. Like the odds are never better than 60-40. Like
Who'd you pick right now then? Tampa Bay or Montreal?
Oh, I think Tampa Bay is going to do it, but if
I've picked everybody against Montreal so
yes.
far. So that's the only thing that just like sticks at me. Like, do I do it again? Do I get 0-4 on that one? Because I would also pick Tampa Bay every time, and they made it.
Yeah.
So now I'm like,
Oh yeah, that's true.
But
No petard.
the only thing that makes me think Tampa Bay might struggle a little bit is how much effing hockey they've had to play lately. Also, if Kucherov is actually injured and was just making his appearance for Game 7 after getting that cross check in the back, if he's actually around and playing, I've got 100% faith in Vasilevsky doing what he does best, and also Carey Price. So then, if I think those are my top two goalies in the NHL from a just pure goalie, I mean, just anyone could say those are the top two goalies in the league. It comes down to defense, will, and offense. I just think Tampa Bay's got all of that, and the only thing Montreal has is the unknown factor.
Yep.
And that unknown factor could be big or it could be small.
Yep.
But I've just got to lean on what I know, and what I know is Tampa Bay's really fucking good.
Yeah, they're
Yeah, no. I saw Jay will appreciate this. I saw a stat the other day. So it was Carey Price has given up 13 goals on 17 expected goals, and like Vasilevsky has given up 11 goals on 19 expected goals. So it's like as legitimately MVP caliber as Carey Price is being in this postseason, Vasilevsky is being just as good. Vasilevsky is incredible. Now,
Vasilevsky's here. Carey Price is here. The rest of the league is like right in here.
Vasilevsky got a shutout in Game 7, and I feel like nobody talked about
and
it.
Game 5, following a loss. The dude
Yep.
has not lost back-to-back games, and he's got like 5 shutouts in the last 15 back-to-back games in the playoffs where he's lost. I mean, the dude is just...
And nobody talks
he's
about it
so
because Tampa is so
uber-focused.
good. Tampa's so good, so nobody talks about the fact that Vasilevsky have done that. If that was Price doing that for Montreal against Vegas, and what he did against Vegas,
We would hear
that's
about
what
it
we're
last
hearing
year,
about.
next year,
Well,
2 years from now.
what Montreal doesn't have is Braden Point scoring in literally every playoff game ever in the history of mankind.
Yeah,
Except the last one.
and basically having Steven Stamkos as a depth forward for them, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dude,
Kucherov.
Steven Stamkos is playing on a line with Anthony Cirelli, and as good as Anthony Cirelli is, the people I know who root for Tampa Bay are like, yeah, he's a high-end two-way center. Like, he is a legitimate Selke guy going forward. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, let's just take the guy we thought was going to be our number one center forever and put him on his wing. And you're like, yeah, sure, why not?
If you're Kevin Shattenkirk, how much does this suck right now? Like you didn't go back to Tampa. You just cashed in on the money.
You know what? It's so funny, too, because
He
like,
got
how
his
many...
2 goals.
He got his
yes.
ring, so
I
it's
was
okay.
gonna say, how many people like can say that like they left Florida or they left their old team for Anaheim and it was a lateral like weather move? Like, like I would take California over Florida every time, but if you're from Eddy land where it's just cold and frozen like you live in an icebox, I don't think there's a huge difference. I think you're fine either way. And I just think that's very
Does
funny.
Stevie Y deserve a ring for this? If they win again, just a complimentary ring.
He absolutely deserved it last year, for sure. I mean, this year, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think
I don't think they give it to him.
No, they won't.
That was a joke, guys.
they're gonna call him up and prank call him. Hey,
How's things going in
we sent you a
Detroit?
ring. And it's gonna be like a ring pop.
Oh, shit. It's 83 out here. What is it there? Oh, no, wait. It's really hot up there, isn't it?
Where does this
What
put?
the fuck is a Moritz cider?
Where does this put Tampa if they win as back-to-back Cup contenders? Where does this put them in conversation with some of the other dynasties we've had recently, like Chicago and LA specifically? Like 2 in a row. Obviously, 2. Like people are gonna put asterisks beside both of these probably.
100%.
but
100%.
But they are a super team. Like it's not. There's no question about it. They're I think by far the best team in this league on paper.
That's fine, but they got 2 different things going for them. One is the bubble last year. One is a shortened season this year that also helps them maybe not be so worn out, like doing 82 games,
The fact that
playoffs,
Stamkos and
all the way to
Kucherov played like
finals.
30 games in the regular season. You just...
Yeah, well, I mean, no, that's the third factor. The third factor is they were able to play the system, so now they are $18 million over the cap and bringing in these guys that didn't play all season that would have had to move guys out. They tried to get rid of Tyler Johnson. They couldn't do it. So they kept him. keep Kucherov, and then wow, he's ready to go first day of the playoffs. I mean, it's just there's so many asterisks there that just go like, ugh, it just feels dirty to just call him the greatest because they put in a roster that should not have been able to be under a salary cap.
Yeah.
Second thing is taxes in Florida are nothing, so most players will try and go to Florida and sign for less, just as if they signed in another state or country and had to pay more in taxes, they would have to sign for more for it to make the same amount in their bankroll. So
Yeah. If we're talking,
that's why you're Steve Stamkos.
if we're talking recent dynasties, I think Chicago tops the list. I think behind that is Pittsburgh team who won back-to-back. And I think Tampa's, if they win, are getting in that conversation with the Kings team who won 2 and 3. And then obviously it all depends on. I think they really cemented if obviously they win this year, they come out in a full regular 82 game season next year and do the same thing. Like a three-peat puts them right up there. I think maybe above the Chicago team. But the problem is, like you said, Jay, people are always going to have asterisks beside these 2 championships for the Bulls.
Dude,
Tampa Bay's
they're
not going to
dumb.
give a shit.
No asterisks.
They're not going to care. I wouldn't put
asterisks.
them beside it either. But I wouldn't put asterisks. But I would say
Everybody plays
it's
by the
a
same fucking rules.
unique.
I have no patience for this asterisk.
No, but if we're comparing dynasty teams,
Stupid.
I think
So,
I don't
okay.
say the championships don't count for Tampa Bay, but if I'm going to compare them to other dynasties and what they had to go through, I'm gonna put a couple other teams in front of them.
Why is he so high in the background? Let's just hear
I don't know,
dog
dude.
barking.
It's just like I just think that's just so dumb to
There
me
he is.
because every team every season plays under the same situations. Some teams get lucky and don't have injuries. Some teams get fucked and have injuries. Some teams have idiots get suspended. Some teams have guys who should have been suspended playing forever. Like all of these weird things happen. Like as long as everybody's playing by the same rules in the same league, I don't have any problem with saying that Tampa Bay is definitively one of the best teams of the last 10 years, especially since we have the proof of concept that they have been one of the best teams of the last 10 years. In my mind, they are up there with Boston, who I would put ahead of LA in quality of team over a significant amount of time. I think Chicago is at the top. I think Pittsburgh is at the top. But beyond those two, I think what Tampa Bay has done over the last, 6-7 years, like when they've had that whole run with, Duncan Keith said it himself at the end of the Stanley Cup that they won. He was like, they're going to be the next us. Like, these guys are incredible. And like, he wasn't really wrong. And like, I don't think it matters that the 2 that they won are the COVID Cups. Like, who gives a shit? Somebody else could have won them and I'd feel the same way. Like, I just think it's dumb. Like, everybody had the same rules. I think Tampa Bay is definitively one of the best teams of the last 10 years.
This all takes a hit
That's
if
cool
Montreal wins. then I don't know if we're talking about this or not.
No, it doesn't, because I think if Montreal wins, that for me personally, I've just decided what this means is that momentum is real, and everybody who says it's not can shut the fuck up.
Right.
Because
But I mean,
I
we're
100% believe in momentum, and I think that this whole Montreal run proves it.
I agree with that 100%. But if we're comparing with Chicago, with Pittsburgh, with LA, all of them came up against teams like this. Chicago came up against Philly, who reverse swept the Boston Bruins to get there. They overcame them. They stopped the momentum. Whatever, they beat them. The Kings did the same thing twice, coming up against the Devils and the Rangers, who were on dynasty or destiny runs of their own. I think if you want to be in that conversation, you've got to beat them. You've got to beat everybody. If you want to be a dynasty team, you got to overcome it. And every year there's going to be a team opposite of you who is either going to be just as good as you, or a team like Montreal who's just on this ridiculous run. They built up all this momentum. Nobody believed in them. They made it to the Stanley Cup final. And I think, no matter what, Tampa's a great team. But if we're going to compare them to Chicago and LA and Pittsburgh, who they all overcame that.
That's why I'm putting them, I think, with Boston, right? Because Boston won one against Vancouver, and then they lost one against St. Louis, who had the magic run. And you know what I mean? But I just think, I loved, to whatever extent that I can, because obviously burn it all to the ground, but I loved those Kings teams. I was a huge Mike Richards fan, right? I loved Drew Doughty. He's one of my favorite players, of my adulthood, watching play. I just enjoy the shit out of him. But like, I would rather. Legitimately think there's a legitimate argument that you would rather have the Boston or Tampa Bay rosters, and there's only one cup amongst them, but they have just as many finals appearances.
Yep.
And I just like, I get that you can't put them with Chicago, you can't necessarily put them with Pittsburgh. I think it would be even hard, maybe, to put them up there with Washington. But like, that feels where they're at, right?
That's where they are now.
Washington, Boston.
Yeah, they have to win the
team,
second to create some space there, and then obviously, if they three-peat or 3 and 4, that's where you start putting them in the Chicago, Pittsburgh territory, where they're just that unreal dominant team, winning the majority of the championships over a 5-year span.
Right. I just like I think this Tampa, like I said, as much as those Kings teams rock, like I'll fucking take Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point over Dustin Brown and Jared Stoll. Like,
if Pat would hear, he'd be telling us that Braden Point is better than Jack Eichel, but that's why he's not here.
I mean, that might not be wrong at this point, unfortunately. But don't tell him I said that.
I'm not going to base it on the playoff.
It's fine. We're just going to cut this whole part.
We lost a lot of people when you said you liked Drew Doughty. So, but let's wrap it up there. We're gonna hop on again, hopefully in the next week or so here with Pat and all the rest of us here to kind of revisit the cycle stuff. Go into the Josh Manson conversation we talked about, and hopefully there's some more news to talk about as well. We have eventually our Seattle expansion draft recap, or probably not recap, preview to go into that we'll have to record, as well as another draft preview that we'll get into as well. And Steven, you recorded, like you just mentioned, a interview with Sierra from Pucks of the Feather. You guys basically did what we did, right? Chatted about kind of all the latest news.
Yeah, it was like kind of a mailbag, but like not really. But like
because
there were
definitely
definitely
sent you mail.
Yeah, because we had like 3 questions, and all of them were about why is Eddy the most handsome member of the group.
Is he?
Oh yeah.
If you ask Dave and
No,
Shane,
that was my 3 questions.
Yeah. But no, we got a couple of questions that helped, but we really did just kind of, use them more as just like a baseline of how to talk about some stuff. So like we talked about some Eichel stuff. We talked a little bit more about the draft, about players maybe Anaheim might be interested in, stuff like that. So we'll have that up soon. So I have no idea if it'll be up before or after this, but it'll be up soon.
Yeah, we'll have that out soon.
Probably before this.
Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna have a lot of episodes later. This is the return. So no more 1 month hiatus from the show. This will come out, like I said, we got another one planned with the 4 of us coming up, plus all those previews of the expansion draft and the draft, and then recaps and free agency. Everything's kind of starting to come together here as we approach July, where all these kind of big dates are going to come pretty fast and furious with the expansion draft. I think just a couple days apart from the draft, and then free agency literally coming a couple days after that. So it's gonna get crazy here, and then obviously if this Eichel stuff ends up happening, we're gonna have all that to talk about. So it's going to be an exciting summer, potentially, for the Ducks, or a summer of disappointment, which is like every summer. So we'll see we'll see which one we get. No matter what, we'll have a lot to talk about. We're planning some interviews and stuff. So apologies for anybody who, again, wanted to listen to this show live. I'm going to work on the live stream stuff. It's been a while, so we'll see what kind of the issue was there and fix it up there. But appreciate everybody listening. It's fun to be back, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye, everybody. Enjoy your miserable summer.